Hello, friend. This is Legal Design Thinking in Real Life, a live series brought to you by Lawyers Design School, where we help lawyers and legal teams to adopt the skills and mindset of legal design. I'm your host, Hannele Korhonen, and I'm the founder of Lawyers Design School. My guest today is Anna Posthumus Meyjes, and we are going to talk about using visualizations in court. If you're following legal design, you probably noticed that we see many of these examples of using legal design in legal documents and in contracts, but litigation process is also an excellent use case for legal design. And today we are lucky to have an expert with us to talk about all of this. Hello, Anna. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. How are you? It's great to be here.
I'm good as well. Where are you joining us from?
I'm based in the Netherlands. This is my home office, and I live close to the city of Haarlem in the Netherlands.
Oh, perfect. We have another guest from the Netherlands. You have a lively legal design community there.
Yes, I think it's quite small, but I think the legal design community for each country is quite small. But luckily, we do have the connection, like European and worldwide as well.
For sure. Hey, anyone watching this live, please join the discussion. Say hi in the comments and let us hear your thoughts and questions about the topic. Hi, Tessa. I see you in the chat already. But
Oh, there.
Anna, yeah,
Hi, Tessa. It's great for you to join us.
how about we start with a quick intro about you and your background?
Yes. Well, I'm a legal designer, and I am the owner and founder of Aclara Legal Design, based in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. And I have. When did I found my company? It was over 5 years ago now. So I've been doing this for quite a while, and with Aclara Legal Design, we focus on the use of information design and legal design in a broader sense to make the legal sector and legal work more accessible and comprehensible. I have a background in law. I used to practice law as an attorney at law, as a litigator. I practiced law at several law firms in the Netherlands for over 10 years. And I have always been a creative person. I like to call myself a maker of all kinds of things. There's lots of things that I like doing. And I think for my creative and curious personality, that got me interested in looking at the relationship I built as a lawyer with my clients, and at some point realizing that we need different ways of communicating with our clients, including ways other than just text, but as a broader perspective. I valued building actual relationships and not just being the lawyer, but looking at people's actual needs. So from that service perspective as well, I got into legal design.
Oh, how lovely to describe the way it started was from the relationship perspective, that you wanted to strengthen the relationship between the lawyer and the client.
Yes.
So then you started Aclara Legal Design. How did that happen?
Well, it was sort of an escalation of many things. As far as I can remember, I started making visualizations for my work in litigation back in 2012. I think I practiced law for around 5 years when I realized that for some types of communication, it was just more helpful to create visualizations. And I realized that often I would go to the whiteboard in my office to draw out the situation, like and the relationship between the parties involved in the dispute that I was that I was handling, and then at some point I was like, why do I go to my whiteboard and and try to figure out this case. And then as soon as I understand all the individual relationships and the main pain points of the case, I go back to my keyboard and start typing everything. And also, the more experience I got as a lawyer, the more I saw that often our clients don't really understand what their problem is. Of course, there's some kind of dispute, but when you get into the details, it's usually a bit different and it's complicated. And when you get involved in litigation, sometimes people get completely lost as to what's happening, what their options are. And some lawyers say yes, but I'm a very good lawyer and I always keep my clients up to date and they understand what their options are. That's great, but still I think there's a lot to be gained when helping clients move through the legal system, and staying on the same page as your client, because litigation is exhausting for people. And I'm not just talking about everyday family law issues, but also for big corporations in large corporate disputes. It's very hard for people to stay on track. So I felt it was one of my missions was to try to help people better navigate through litigation.
It is so true that the litigation is never just about winning or losing the case, but it's the whole experience that you have throughout the process. And I think that lawyers could do so much better with handling the experience.
Yes, and let's not even get into how the legal system works, because that's a whole nother chapter that we can discuss at length. But even if we just take the legal system for now as a given, it's how you navigate through it with your client and for you as a lawyer, that I think a lot can be improved. And only one aspect of that is how you communicate in court. But that's one of the aspects that I decided needs some improvement.
So important. So if we dive more deeply into the day's topic about legal design litigation, it's a broad topic, of course. So could you first maybe explain the different ways that we can use legal design in litigation before we go to the visualization part?
Well, of course. I mean, I don't have to explain that legal design can have so many different applications, right? Because the design process is a methodology, it's a way of thinking, and it's it includes certain steps in certain order to go from a problem to a tried and tested solution, putting human center of the solution. But if we just for litigation, it can be many things in how you can approach the client's experience in litigation. But I think for now, if we just use on the communication in litigation, there's basically the communication between the lawyer and the client, and between the lawyer and the client, it is so important to be on the same page, because otherwise mistakes will happen. You will have, with your responsibility as a lawyer presenting the case to the court, you can make mistakes if you don't have all the information that you need. And also clients often get confused or can get lost in what is actually relevant to the case. So it's very important to understand each other and to keep asking questions, to be able to represent clients best in court. And then, of course, you have the communication between the client and lawyer on one hand and the court on the other hand. And that can be both written communication when It depends on your legal system, of course. But for example, in the Netherlands, you first have 1 or 2 rounds of court submissions, and then you have an actual hearing, like in person at court, usually in most cases. So you both have like written documents that may or may not include visuals. And then you have the hearing itself, where you're actually there in person presenting your case. And so you have verbal communication in addition to textual communication, and even visual communication. Even just you being there is a visual way, of course, to communicate. And I think like what's relevant now during this talk, when we talk about using visualizations in court, I mostly talk about the use of visualizations in communicating your case and your arguments as a lawyer, together with your client, of course, to the court. And I mean, I've also like been hired by lawyers to create sort of litigation overviews of arguments and counter arguments to improve, to help clients better understand what's happening during a case. So I was sort of like instructed by the lawyer in the communication with the client. But I think one of the opportunities that is sought after most is the communication to the court, and especially during hearings. So maybe is this a good time to share
yes,
a project that
definitely. Yes.
Okay. Let me share.
It's always easier to understand when you have something to look at.
And having said that, I can also tell you, like I call these things litigation graphics. I don't know if other people call them the same way. You can call them litigation visualizations, like whatever you think is the most appropriate term. So that's just how I'd like to call them. They are a type of infographic or visualizations, but because you use them in litigation, that's how I named them. If you Google this, it's going to be hard to find examples of these kinds of visualizations used in litigation, because, probably we don't all use the same words and to identify them. But most importantly, of course, during court cases, the information is confidential. So I'm able to share this project with you now, but it's very hard to get your client's approval to share your visualizations in the public domain. So I'm happy for this law firm project more that I was able to share this. So just as an introduction, let me walk you through this. I hope you can see me scroll, right? And you can see first, right? Okay. Well, this law firm project more asked me to design a couple of visualizations in a very technical case. So they had like technical problems that they wanted to explain to the court. And then they had some general needs to communicate their case. This was a summons proceedings, summary proceedings. So it's always under a lot of time pressure. Just to understand what we were dealing with. So you get that their client was summoned to appear in court in 3 weeks' time. So that's not like super urgent time constraint, but still there's a lot less time than in like regular proceedings. And they instructed me right from the start, which is great because as a legal designer, I feel like you are part of your client's goals. One of them is how to communicate effectively with the court.
Miguel, sorry to interrupt. Miguel is asking, are you able to zoom in a bit? They're saying that the visualizations are very tiny. I don't know if that's.
But I will scroll some more.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
As an introduction.
Go ahead.
Yes, I always, like, even when I use these visualizations in my own work, when I was doing these cases for my clients, I say, like, in litigation, you always have a couple of elements that are really important. And I used to practice civil law. I suppose it's not much different when you practice other types of law, but there's usually the element of time, which parties are involved, and the relationship between them. And also there's also this general goal that is to lead with your arguments instead of just contesting the other party's arguments, right? So I understand, like, that this is, I hope you can see this a little bit better. This is anonymized, and you can see some Dutch words in it. Of course, this still had to be anonymous, but as you can see, like, we created this timeline. Because any litigation, at least I've never been involved in a case where timing wasn't relevant. So you want to explain what has happened when. And as you can see from this timeline, we made, like, in the original version, we had the one party's name up top and the other party's name here. And then we have this list of facts placed in this timeline to explain what happened when. And also, like, this party sent this email and that party responded to that, or have a meeting, something like that. And you see this red bar that was something to do with, like, delivery times, and, like, when a certain deadline was reached, for example. So you can add another layer in the timeline. So timelines, in my experience, are almost always very helpful in litigation. And then if I look, like, this is an organization chart. I mean, I know that it's small, but it's anonymous anyway. It just goes to show that what we intended to do here is to explain that the opposing party was part of a huge conglomerate, but all the other sister companies were not directly involved in the dispute, because the dispute was about a product that was only created by this company, and they had these products, right? So it's an organizational chart, but as an added layer, we were able to discuss about the product that was part of the dispute by adding that to the organizational chart. Let me just see if we can see this here a little bit better. Yes. And this kind of visualization is what I call a situation chart or situation map. That's also, like, an unofficial term, or maybe now it is official because I'm calling it that.
Yes.
I call it a situation map because you want to explain the situation between parties, and it is sort of a map because you want the court and everyone involved to understand what's going on, who is involved. So you can say here, there's company A, company B, they have a contract, right? So that relationship is contractual, but then company B has, like, this was about a technical product, has a contract with some, like, electricity companies, like energy companies, and then they have their own customers. So every entity, every party in the dispute, but also other related entities, are included in this map. And this is actually, well, almost in any case, relevant for the courts to keep in mind whenever the discussion can go to, like, other supposedly involved parties, but that are maybe not be party to a contract, for example, or, like, any other stakeholders that are mentioned, or And this is a very simple overview, right? But it can be very complicated, of course, when you have loads of parties. So a situation map is also one of the figures that I almost always use in litigation. Of course, there are many other diagrams that can be helpful in presenting your case, and I've done other formats as well that I unfortunately can't share. But like I said, like the element of time, the involved parties and their relationships, and any other information that's helpful to the specifics of the case should be high on your list to create visualizations for.
There's a question.
Helpful, but maybe let me just see if there were any questions about this.
Yeah, there are questions. There's a question: are you providing the visualizations to the opposing counsel in advance of the hearings to avoid any objections?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Well, it depends on your legal system, of course, and like the rules for the specific type of proceedings you're involved in. Like in Dutch proceedings, usually in civil proceedings, there's this rule where you have to submit, where you can only submit additional information, additional to the court submissions that are like your official submission, up to 2 weeks in advance of the hearing. So if you submit it later than that, then the court will have grounds to refuse your information. I think it really depends on, so usually when I talk to my clients, I ask them, do you want to create visuals that you submit together with your court documents, right? So you have your written document where you can just say, okay, we have a visualization that explains point A, for example. You can just, as a set, submit everything. If this is a little bit more like an afterthought and created after the court submissions, then I do advise my clients to keep the 2 weeks in mind. But also, like, do you want to give the opposing party the opportunity to respond to these before the hearing? Then you should do that 2 weeks in advance. Or do you want to take the risk of just presenting these during the hearing? That can also be a tactic, but then you have the risk of the court refusing the submission of these infographics. On the other hand, when you go to court and you're presenting your case to the court, essentially your story, your arguments will be the same as in your court documents, right? You're not gonna come with like huge surprises in your arguments or your claims. So I say, like, if the infographics in this sort of form are only supporting your arguments, your information, they're not bringing anything new, I would suggest, I would be comfortable to explain to the courts, like, this is just another format, but the information is exactly the same as in our court submissions. So none of this should come as a surprise to the opposing party. So they also do not have any disadvantage when we use these visualizations during the hearing. Having said that, I have also never experienced courts refusing this kind of communication in court. Of course, that is not like an academically like tried and tested foolproof methodology. I'm just saying, like, I did this for years. It's never been a problem in the courts where I was, and neither has it been for the clients that I created these visualizations for. Usually, the court will just accept this as part of your overall communication. They find it helpful. Opposing parties, yes, they sometimes do object to the use of these visualizations, but
on what grounds?
That it's new. That is new information. I need
Okay.
any time to prepare for it, and it's too
Yeah.
late to submit this. But usually, it's pretty easy to see how it's not different. I mean, if you just like if just the parties involved in the dispute and their relationships is contractual, for example, whether you write that down in text or you use this visualization, it's the same information, right? So I would love to hear if people have had other experiences, because that's good to know. But so far, like from my own experience, but also from other legal designers that I know, I haven't heard that they were unsuccessful in using these in litigation. Practical point, by the way, is if you want to use this kind of visualization, it's important to think about the logistics. Like, are you going to print these? Do you want them poster format? Like, you want them on a cardboard or something like sturdy, so you can really like put them down so people can see them. If your court has a screen that you can use and that you can cast your slides to, for example, then it's of course it's very helpful to show them on screen. It really depends on what your court allows, and I recommend asking beforehand. Usually the simplest form is just ask them whether they have a whiteboard at the court. Usually they do have, and a whiteboard has this little ledge, and if you have like a cardboard version of your visualization, you can just put them there. So I mean, technology is great. If you can use your slides digitally, that's great. But if not, just go old schools, go to the printers and have it printed on like large poster format.
Oh, that's so helpful. And those visuals are just so, they look so professional, and really, really great. Can you walk us through the process? How would you create this? What do you have first? What do you have this information in a written form and then you start drafting it, or what's the process?
Yes. Well, like I said, for this particular example with these clients, it was as soon as their so Project Moore is the law firm. As soon as their client was summoned to appear in court, they got the summons and they send it to me. Of course, because of my background as a in litigation as a lawyer, I'm able to read those documents. And I think the next step was to have a call to discuss strategy with the clients. Look, what are our main arguments going to be? How do we want to present our defense against these claims? So I'm a little bit involved. I mean, of course, I don't determine the strategy of the case. Sometimes I have some thoughts, but I'm not actually involved in the actual legal arguments. But it is very important for me to participate in the thinking behind it, because I said, like, we want to help the client get what they want from litigation, right? So it might be helpful when the dispute is about this sort of complicated machine, for example, or about software, that I really understand how that works, so I can help them decide like what kind of visualization may be helpful. Like I said, these visualizations that are shown here are pretty much helpful for any kind of case, but sometimes you have something like it's important to show how the internal system of a certain machine works, or it can be a location. So what is the traffic situation like? Which side of the building is this? So I always want to be really involved in the details of the case as far as I can, and the strategy, like what are we trying to achieve. Purely from the design point of view, I saw there's a question like what design tools do I use to create visualizations. These kinds of designs I create in Adobe Illustrator, because Illustrator is a vector-based design tool that makes it very flexible to work on any kind of scale, which is helpful if you want to have your designs printed on a large scale, like a poster format. I mean, I've also had clients that create, like sometimes my clients create something first in PowerPoint and send it to me, and then I sort of translate it to more like a professional design. But typically these kinds of designs I create in Illustrator, and also my clients do not, they cannot like change details in the visualization. So usually the visualization part is all within my design software. Most law firms don't have access to Adobe Illustrator or InDesign. I do recommend, if you want to create something like this yourself, it doesn't matter that much which tool you use, as long as you see it as having a white canvas. I would be able to recreate this in PowerPoint if I wanted to. It's not the most, it's, as a professional designer, it's not my favorite tool, but you can definitely use it.
Yeah, that's an ongoing discussion in my team, that PowerPoint is not the
It's not a design tool, people.
Yes.
It does reasonably well in creating sort of half decent slides.
But it's accessible to most lawyers, so that's the benefit.
Yes, and it's not just, I mean, great tools definitely can help, but it is, I mean, even if you take like poor quality icons or don't have the best sense for layout or whatever, but I always say, when people want to create visualizations themselves, that it's about the effectiveness of the communication. So it doesn't necessarily have to look pretty, as long as it's effective in what you're trying to communicate. And also, that's not as easy as it seems. And simplicity is really hard.
That is so true, and many times the more simple the outcome, the more complex the process has been behind it, because it can take so long time for you to really convey the most critical information in a simple and clear way.
Also, Hannah, I'm curious to know, have you ever used any like similar kinds of visualizations in court, or have you been involved in it?
No, I haven't, because I'm so, and that's why I was so excited to have you here, because I've never been to court. I'm not a litigator. I've been doing contracts my whole life. I'm a contract geek, so I don't have experience, but I can definitely see the value, and I'm really curious to hear what's the feedback from the judges, because I could imagine that they are kind of enjoying the benefits of getting this more clear understanding of the case.
Well, I think there's two things that I can say about that, like how courts respond to these kinds of visualizations formally and informally. Formally, like I said, most courts don't really respond to, oh, this is a new format. Do I like it or not? Or will I allow this or not? Usually courts, when you just show up at a hearing, or it's whether these visualizations are part of your court documents, usually courts are just like, okay, this is just information about this case that I need to decide on. And if it makes your arguments clearer and it helps them understand the dispute and not diverge into too many like subtopics, but like it helps keep the dispute focused on the essentials, for example. I mean, courts love that, but who wouldn't? I mean, it's a time saver for judges. And in the Netherlands, and I'm sure in other countries, legal systems as well, courts have a very, very high workload. They have been for many years due to cutbacks. So anything that makes their work a little bit easier is very welcome. And that's also my informal point. So I know some judges that I discuss this type of visualization with. So and they says like anything that can help us do our jobs basically is allowed, as long as it doesn't disadvantage people or makes like, I mean, you still have to have like now I'm looking for the right word in English. Like now my Dutch brain is turning on. I can't find the right term in English. But I mean, as long as it's a fair trial, maybe that's the best way to describe it. As long as it's still a fair trial, and courts are open to accepting visualizations like this. And also I found that when you have, like, for example, this like situation map, you have it on a poster during the hearing and you have like a heated debate. I've had instances where courts were like interrupting my opposing party, and they would say, like, wait a minute, are we talking about the red stuff or are we talking about the yellow stuff, for example? So like courts will, because they see that visual, that will be their point of reference when you're discussing the case. So you definitely have an advantage when you use these kind of visualizations. And even if there's still a dispute whether, I mean, even if there's still a dispute whether these visualizations correctly display the situation in the opposing party's view. Of course, it's always a biased view, right?
Do you ever have a situation where you have two competing timelines, or?
Yes, I've had that in the past, where we created visualizations that we presented as annexes to our court submissions. And the law firm, the opposing party's law firm, I was quite familiar with them, and even the individual lawyers. So as soon as we created visualizations, they also started creating visualizations. And then you have to, like the same as in text, you have to the court explain maybe why you don't agree with their visualization, for example. And then it becomes really important that you kind of know what you're doing, because just like words can have a certain meaning, and you can argue about what something means. It's the same as for our visualizations. So if you do have to have some kind of visual literacy to be able to express what you want to express visually. Otherwise, the visualization will not be helpful at all. So I would be the last person to say, like, everyone needs to make visualizations. Well, I encourage everyone to try and to experiment with it, but you need to be sure whether they actually help you in your communication. And if you don't really have the right skills yet, then it can harm your case as well. The same as if you have like a junior lawyer do a very complicated case, you won't end up with the best result. So you do want to know what you're doing, but that's not different from using visualizations in a contract or anywhere else, right? It's not the goal itself to make it visual. It's only when it's helpful. But I don't have to explain you that.
But I think that's a really, really important point, to be aware of all the different meanings, that they have certain meanings, and the way that visuals are typically. So don't get crazy creative and then put your visuals in your court documents.
And then also, of course, one of the legal designers' favorite things to talk about, that's why you also need to test your designs, right? You may have in your head what you think your visualization is communicating, but sometimes it can be very unclear for someone else, or even misleading. So you always want to test your visualizations, and especially when they are this important in this kind of context. And
sure.
when talking about testing, you can't collect a general group of testers for this kind of sensitive information, of course. So testing can be limited, but at the very least, you want to, preferably, I ask, because the target audience is going to be the court, right? So they are knowledgeable, right? So it's not like for everyday people that you're making these visualizations. You already have like a specialized audience. I recommend testing your designs with other lawyers within your firm, for example, that are also knowledgeable but may not know this case, and maybe their expertise is in a different area of law. And of course, you want to make sure that your clients understand the visualizations as well. So testing is a bit different in this context, but extremely important.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. Oh, thank you so much for sharing these golden nuggets of information. And I think especially seeing these examples, because as you say, it can be so difficult to see concrete examples because of the nature of the of the court.
I had like 3 more projects to show, but it's very limited. But I really try my best for every project that I do, especially in litigation, to show what can be done. And I would love to see if someone's joining us now live, or whether they watch the replay, I would love to see someone else's examples as well and hear about their experience in litigation. Frankly, when I started out in legal design, because of my background in litigation, at first I thought that my client base would be mostly law firms wanting me to do this kind of visualization. But then the market is different, and I quickly noticed that a lot of people are asking for contract design. But that's actually more common, and that makes sense because that's like templates and you can use them over and over again. This is all custom design just for one case. But I mean,
the benefits can be huge.
The benefits can be huge if you are litigating over like a big sum of money or like very important interest for your client. Why not spend a little bit extra budget on making your case more effective, like making the communication of your case more effective?
There's a question for you. Do you operate as a law firm or as a design company?
As a design company. Yeah, I always say you get my legal opinions for free. No, I don't officially provide legal advice anymore. So it helps with any conflict of interest, and so law firms hire, and like other businesses as well. When it comes to litigation, law firms hire me as a legal designer for their litigation team.
That's a perfect segue for me to ask, what are you currently working on? Do you have something special on your drawing board?
Yes. Well, I have, I'm working on, like, usually the kind of projects that I do are quite diverse. I'm currently working on a web design for the Dutch Council for Legal Aid, and that's to provide clear information to lawyers who do immigration law, sort of like best practices for lawyers. So that's a completely different kind of work from what you see here. I'm also involved in a project for the publisher Wolters Kluwer at the moment, where one of their main legal publications, which used to be text only, I'm creating infographics on topics that usually are found complicated by lawyers. So when they research a certain topic, they will see my infographics alongside text. And then I also, like, every couple of weeks, I host legal design training, and I'm involved in contract designs. But yeah, it's always been very diverse ever since I started out, and I really like doing that as well. I think it really helps us having a broader perspective, especially when I help law firms. I feel like it's very helpful that I work directly with corporations as well. So I know what legal teams struggle with, for example, or businesses in general. And then when I work with law firms directly, I'm able to help that communication as well.
Yeah, we need to see the bigger picture all the time, and really be hands-on with all kinds of
How about you? What are you working on?
I couldn't agree more that the work is so diverse that I feel like it's like these small stalls coming and make a huge water. But yeah, I'm working on trainings, workshops and trainings, and online courses, and also design projects. But it's a wonderful diverse occupation to have.
I couldn't agree more.
Hey, where can people find more about you and your work if they want to connect with you?
Well, of course, as you see my my website here inside on screen, so they can find more about my business, what we do here. But also I have a lot of free resources. Like you can see the blog. I have a favorites page where I share all kinds of like tips on books, publications, tools that I use, etc. I have a newsletter as well, and I also would love people to connect with me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Just look for Aclara Legal Design or my personal name. Yeah, I'd love to hear if people have other questions or interest, or like want to share their personal experience, because I do feel like a lot of people, especially when you're the only one within your organization who's sort of the legal design ambassador, can be quite lonely. So like, yeah, if you're interested in legal design, yeah, I would love to meet you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for today and sharing your example and your experiences. It's been really wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for having me during your lives, and it's been my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing many more of your live sessions.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for watching. Thank you so much for the great questions, and we'll see you again. Okay, thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.